My current position is Vice President of Surgical Services at St. Mark's Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nice. Awesome. There doesn't seem to be a specific pathway to being a manager or a director. So, what steps would you recommend for someone else looking to be promoted or to get to that point? And how did you do that for your own journey?
And that's a great question, Carissa. So what steps I would recommend for individuals? The first thing I would say, and this might not be the most popular response, is really determine if you want to go into leadership. I think a lot of high-performing frontline employees feel that they would make a great leader because they're performing well at their current tasks. However, it takes completely different characteristics to be a great leader. So you really need to look inside and determine if you want to make that change or that challenge, and determine if that's the right thing for you. Now, if it is the right thing for you, what I would suggest you do is you look for opportunities. And a lot of the times you do have to be in the right place at the right time, but you also need to develop the right characteristics in asking your leader or your manager for more opportunities, more tasks, and then you need to perform those well. And as you perform those well, you need to make it known that you want to be promoted, you want to move on up, and whatever opportunities present themselves, just run with them. You don't have to, always be the shining star. You can actually, delegate some of those things and show those characteristics to some of your other peers. And if they join with you in those, make sure that they get the credit and that you remain humble in that.
Did you have a mentor at any point? And if so, how did they help you?
I did. I had a great mentor. I had a mentor named Tanya Levine. She's currently the Vice President of Surgical Services at Swedish in Denver, Colorado. She, when I was an orderly, because I started out as an orderly in the operating room, and I've been in the operating room my entire career, she was the one who sat me down, asked me what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. And as I discussed those options with her, she was the one who helped me. Okay, this is the trajectory you need to go. These are the things that you need to do, and I will do everything I can to help you along that pathway. And even to this day, I still reach out to her and I still talk with her about those things.
That's awesome. And have you had a chance to mentor anyone yourself?
I have. I'm currently mentoring two individuals. I have two directors directly underneath me. One is the operating room director. His name is Andy Lamoureux. And then I have a peri-anesthesia director named Michael Furness, who is over all the ancillary departments in surgical services, such as same-day, PACU, endo, and even a surgical center over at 45th.
And how was that experience for you, being the mentor versus the mentee?
It's different. It's really, really different. And I think that a lot of leaders would like to say that they pride themselves on mentoring other individuals, but it's actually very challenging because both of these individuals that I'm mentoring have completely different personalities and completely different trajectories. The OR director is a nurse, and he definitely wants to move up and move on. My peri-anesthesia director, his background is actually surgical technology. So being over clinical and nursing departments and having nothing to do with surgical technology has been a challenge for him, but he's done a really, really good job with it. So he wants to move in a direction of quality. Andy, the OR director, wants to move in a direction of operations. So it's really challenging trying to direct them in completely different paths and trying to help them along that way. And I think the only thing that I've been able to do extremely well, I would say that I'm doing okay, is just getting them exposed, networking with them and other individuals in those pathways, so that because I'm not the expert in a lot of those things, I can direct them to the expert.
In your experience, how much communication is ideal between you and whoever your boss is to helps you with your day-to-day work?
That's a great question. My current boss is the chief operating officer here. His name is Sean Patterson. And I would like to say that daily communication is imperative and paramount to the success of both of us. So, and it doesn't have to be like one would consider autocratic or micromanagement. It's not that at all. We just need to keep each other apprised and abreast of every situation that's going on. I don't want him to be unaware of a situation that's happening in any of my surgical services departments. If a physician goes to him and says, "Hey, this is happening," I want him to be aware of that. And so that way we can both be on the same page and we can both give that same directive to the physician saying, "Hey, we've already discussed it. This is our action plan. This is what we're already putting into place to make sure that either this never happens again, or on the flip side, we're going to praise these individuals for a win."
And do you think there's a such thing as too much communication?
That's another great question. I would like to say you can consider a lot of things over communicated, and people can become slightly annoyed by those things. But I would definitely rather have that slight annoyance of over communication than under communication. And I think it is really difficult to say if there is a perfect amount of communication. I don't think that such a thing exists. It's either under or over. That's just my own opinion.
So have you ever, during your career, have you ever found yourself faced with coming into an organization, faced with antiquated systems or policies that you thought, wow, this really needs to be fixed? And did you have the power to fix them, or did you have to just kind of deal with it? Did you experience anything like that?
This is going to be kind of a long response, so I apologize. I think that every leader falls into some of those categories in any sort of system or facility that they go to. And I don't want to blame their predecessors or even themselves for allowing those things to happen, because every facility is going to have antiquated systems and policies. I have run into a few of those, and yes, I do have the power to change those. I think in every aspect of a surgical services leaders uh, repertoire, they should have that power, but they also need to present it in a business case, whether that's financial or whether that's qualitative or even quantitative. So for policies, we'll just take, for example, there are so many policies in every facility that you go to that are going to change from every 5 to 7 years, because the recommendations will change from every 5 to 7 years. And like I said, I don't want to blame the current leader or even their predecessor, because they're doing a lot of things. They have a lot of things to work on, not just policies and procedures, but they have so much going on that sometimes policies kind of fall on the back burner. So having governing bodies like AMI and ISHM, which is now I think the Sterile Processing Association, and AORN, who can help us with those things and change our policies and even get rid of some policies that shouldn't be there in the first place, because they're procedures or they're so detailed that there's no room to move within those. It definitely helps. It really, really does help. So I've been able to remove and change a lot of those policies, change and help institute some different procedures or pathways for our patients and for our employees. But I really, really want to make it clear that every single leader deals with that, and I cannot blame them if they don't get around to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's just so much going on in an OR, and it's like every time somebody new comes in, it's just so difficult to like get to, your wish list, which is my next question. Um, do you have a wish list for 2022? We've obviously had a hard last year and a half. And so do you think, first, do you have a wish list?
I do. I have multiple wish lists, not only just financial wish lists for equipment and things like that, but just productivity wish lists and promotion wish lists for a lot of individuals, either frontline employees or other leaders that are underneath me, and even some of my peers, trying to help them and direct them in the right way. So yes, I do have multiple wish lists.
And so, do you have any ways that you're thinking about how to achieve a couple of them? Can you share some examples?
Absolutely, I can share some examples. So financially for the capital wish list. Currently, right now in the state of Utah, we are experiencing record volumes, and it's not just unique to HCA or St. Mark's. I would say even our competitors are experiencing that. Currently, right now, we're experiencing volume growth of anywhere between 7 and 12%, depending on the month. And when you have a typical growth volume of anywhere between 1 and 3%, it gets pretty hard to handle, both equipment wise and staff and capacity, just physical capacity wise. So currently right now, putting together a business pro forma for expansion for another operating room, for more staff and for more equipment, specifically surrounding orthopedic and neuro volume. That's something that I've already started to put together, and I've already sat down with my CFO and my COO to try and present that CAMS report and get it approved.
Nice. And how has the staffing been for you? I mean, staffing with nursing has been growing difficulty for years, and now with COVID, that's kind of sent things over the edge. What have you seen the last year and a half with staffing from your end?
Another great question. I apologize if this is a roundabout or long answer again, but I think for the longest period of time, surgical services has been king. Like, everyone knows that surgical services brings the revenue to the facility and kind of carries the facility along, even in poor times, or I should say, sorry, less generous times. But it took COVID to kind of put us in our place, because we realized that, oh, hey, guess what? You're not always the top dog. So let's go ahead and close down surgery, and let's reallocate these individuals, the personnel, to different floors. Let's start to train them in the ICU and the PCU and respiratory therapy, just in case all of these things start to happen. So it really was a shock, like, oh my gosh, we don't have any surgeries to do. What are we going to do? As COVID started, I won't say subside because it's still rampant, as we started to redefine our processes and our throughput in order to allow more surgical patients to come through, we realized again, okay, well, we need to make sure that we have enough staff for this influx of these patients, even these cancer patients who have been waiting months to have these procedures. And unfortunately, we found at that time frame, like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of traveling opportunities around, and we are having surgical techs, we are having nurses from all departments in surgical services, and our sterile processing techs going for these traveling jobs. And we were having people leave left and right for these more lucrative positions. Now, once they got in those lucrative positions, they realized that they weren't any fun, and they decided that they wanted to come back after 13 weeks, but that still put us at a deficit. So we have been doing our best to hire and become fully staffed in the operating room. And I think we're just about there. We're a few surgical technology positions short. Ancillary services such as sterile processing departments, same-day surgery, and PACU, we are still struggling. We're absolutely still struggling. We cannot find, just tenured or experienced individuals in those departments to help us out. And I feel like, because the unemployment rate for nurses and for these specific technical positions is so low, if there's one individual, they have 15 offers, and they get to choose, well, obviously the most high offer or what best suits their lifestyle. So we are struggling with that, but I think we'll get there soon enough. It will take some time though.
What do you think will start to turn the tide on that? I mean, are you seeing kind of the seeds of what will change that? Because like you said, if I can get paid X amount for traveling versus being on staff somewhere, I'm just going to choose the traveling. So what do you think is going to turn that around?
I think it's going to take all facilities and all healthcare systems to realize that, I don't want to sound awful in this sense, but it's going to take them to realize that you can't pay a surgical technologist $15 an hour anymore, or a lower wage. Central processing, you can't do surgery without central processing, and you can't pay them $14 an hour. Because they can go across the street to a fast food or a restaurant and they can get paid more, or they can go to Amazon and they can get paid more. And they would probably have less stress in their life, not dealing with surgery or not dealing with the instrumentation sterility for surgery. So it will take all of that, along with just the entire country realizing that, healthcare in general, we really have to reinvigorate people with their passion in order to serve, because as people decide that they're a little either against or for vaccinations or for COVID or whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's COVID or not. If we don't reinvigorate our current workforce, we won't turn it around. We absolutely will not turn it around. We have to find something. And I think that throughout COVID, there were some good things, like people started the Heroes Work Here movement, healthcare heroes, all of that stuff. But I think that only goes so far. You have to really recognize those individuals. And I think that we're starting to do that as individual facilities. But until we do that as a country, I don't think that we will fully turn it around.
Yeah, and that goes into my next question. So, in your opinion, what can the C-suite do to address some of these issues? Like kind of navigating that line between efficiency for the OR, obviously good patient care, and then just like being profitable, obviously. Like, what role do you think the C-suite has in making some improvements in that realm?
That's a great question. I think that that's always a delicate balance for any leader, especially in middle management. I'll get to the C-suite in a sec, because as a manager, a director, or even a VP of a service line, you always have pressure from all sides. You have pressure from people underneath you, pressure above you, and even pressure from the sides, especially from physicians, for efficiency and quality. Now, quality will always drive the bottom line for profitability, but you still need to make sure that you're pushing individuals to be more efficient. And whether people can say, oh, well, that's a little unsafe, or we're moving too fast, ultimately there's 1,000 ways to be safe. So individuals will perform differently. But if you see that, say, certain nurses and techs are moving quickly on orthopedics, and you have a certain nurse and tech that are a little bit slower, you can say, hey, let's get you with these individuals so you can see how that works, and we can see how to be more efficient. Now, on to the C-suite portion, I think it depends on the healthcare system, to be honest. If you are an individual facility, I think that the C-suite has a lot more opportunity to speak with those individuals and try and accommodate what they want, if it's monetary or if it's schedule-wise or something of that nature. But if you're getting into large healthcare systems where each individual facility, the C-suite doesn't really have a say, it has to go to a larger committee or a larger group or division, that becomes pretty difficult. And I think the only thing the C-suite can do, a lot of people say, well, they just continue to buy us pizza and abuse them. That's not necessarily true. The biggest thing the C-suite can do to help is round. Put on scrubs, go into the operating room, go into the PACU, go into same-day surgery, go down to SPD, go into endoscopy. Make sure that they see that you're visible, that you're willing to put your scrubs on, go there, talk with them, because that's a big deal for them. They don't get to converse with the CEO or the CFO all that often. So we need to make sure that they are rounding. And I feel at St. Mark's, our C-suite is fantastic at that. They have a weekly rounding agenda that each week a different C-suite member goes through every surgical services department. They spend about a half hour, and sometimes even more because the operating room's quite large, just talking with people, just asking them how they're doing, what they can help them with. And people joke around sometimes, oh, great, $1 million would be great. And they laugh and joke about that. But in all seriousness, if they say, you know what, I just need an extra Mayo stand to do my job better, they're like, okay, let's get on that. Let's create a stoplight report. Let's get that done for you. So they have done a fantastic job with that. And I think that every facility can learn from it.
That is incredible. I don't think I've ever heard anything like a planned, concerted effort by the C-suite to round. Like
Yeah.
I've never heard before. That's awesome. Okay, so what advice would you give to your younger self?
ah, oh, this one might be a little somber. I have a few pieces of advice. I don't think a lot of individuals realize how lonely leadership can be. When they are frontline staff and they're doing great, or they have the characteristics to be promoted, they're friends. They're friends with all their peers. They get to joke around, all of those things. As you make that transition into leadership, it's different, regardless of what anyone says, it's different, and it becomes lonely because, like I said, you're getting pressure from all different sides and you feel alone. Whether you're married, you have children, it doesn't matter. At work, you become lonely. So my advice would be, a question to my younger self is, are you prepared for that? Because when I first became a leader, I was not. I was not prepared for that whatsoever. My second piece of advice would be patient. Be patient. I'm the individual who likes to push myself. I think that a lot of people say that they're a perfectionist, but I'm not necessarily a perfectionist. I'm a planner. So if I'm not hitting my milestones and my goals, I beat myself up a little bit, and I struggle to, what I would say, redesign those goals to be obtainable. I almost push myself too far in that aspect. Okay, well, I'm supposed to be hitting this by a year and a half. If I'm not hitting this, okay, it's going to be, 19 months. Nah, let's be more accurate with that. So be patient, realize that you're going to try your best, but just be patient. And if you're not moving as quickly as you would like to move, just realize it will happen. Things happen for a reason.
What do you believe is your superpower?
And my superpower at work? Oh, I believe my superpower at work is probably integrity. I think that a lot of leaders in surgical services bend to the will of anyone who's pushing them, whether it's staff, whether it's the C-suite, whether it's physicians. Mine, I would feel, is integrity and transparency, for that matter. People can have a whole bunch of different ideas of how clinicians want to be spoken to, but I have always erred on the side of just being transparent with them and doing the right thing for the right reason. Now, we've all dealt with physicians who can be angry, gruff, be adolescent at sometimes, and want what they want when they want it. And sometimes that's not achievable. But if they know that you're going to work as hard as you can to uncover any possible way of getting what they want, and then you still come back to them and say, sorry, I apologize, we can't do this, they start to change their mentality a little bit. They start to kick and scream a little bit less. They still do it, but they understand that you're working as hard as possible to help them out. So doing the right thing for the right reasons would be my superpower.